Next up, we have Nicola and Maha, who are both from the World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council and co-host the Greenstyle Podcast. Nicola is pursuing a Bachelor of Marine Science. She is a Sea Life Trust alumnus and founded Sea Change Network. Maha is from New Zealand and is currently studying law and global studies. She wants to work in environmental law and policy and is really interested in sustainable fashion and working with that in the future. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you guys.
Thank you so much. And that was an amazing speech from Gabrielle. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me, Maha? Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So I guess, hello everyone, happy early World Ocean Day, and we are so excited to be here and be presenting to you all things fashion and ocean. I'm Nicola Tsiolis. Again, I'm a part of the World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council, and I'm also co-host of the Greenstyle Podcast with Maha. Maha is one of my good friends and is an overall incredible and passionate person. Today I'm going to be interviewing Maha, and we're going to be chatting a little bit about our ocean and the fashion industry and how it's all intertwined, as well as discussing a little bit about the Greenstyle. So firstly, Maha, could you please introduce yourself a bit and who you are and what you're doing?
Kia ora, ko maha toku ingoa. E noho ana ahau I Aotearoa, he toira ahau ki te tamaki makoto te wānanga. So hi guys, I'm Maha. I live in New Zealand and I'm currently a student at Auckland University, as I said before, studying law and global studies, majoring in sustainable development. So I guess I'm a student, that's pretty much what I do. As Nicola said before as well, we host a podcast together, which we actually created. We probably launched almost about a year ago now. So I think it's a year, like at the end of June. Before we started, I wanted to do a quick karakia, just because I thought it would be appropriate to do one in this scenario. So those who don't know what a karakia is, it's basically this, almost like a prayer or like a chant, I guess, but it's just kind of a way to spread like good spiritual well-being to everyone who's here. So I found this one and I thought it would be fitting. It goes, "Tu tawa mai I runga, tu tawa mai I raro, tu tawa mai I roto, tu tawa mai I waho, kia tau ai ti mauri tu, ti mauri ora, ki te katoa homie huie tai kie." So that just kind of means like, come forth from above, below, within, and from the environment, the vitality and well-being for all strengthened in unity. And I thought that'd be kind of fitting for the scenario here. Yeah, I mean, we could probably just go straight to the questions unless we want to give like a bit of a background to Greenstyle and kind of like why did we start it and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe if you want to give just a quick background about the Greenstyle, how and why and we created this podcast.
Yeah. So about a year ago, probably a bit more than a year ago now, we were all in lockdown, and Nicola and I, we had known each other through World Oceans Day, and we were like, we should do something around business and sustainable business. And we both happened to be quite passionate about fashion, and we both really liked fashion. And we thought to ourselves, why don't we make a podcast interviewing different ethical fashion businesses, because those businesses are usually quite small and they're probably being impacted because of lockdown and COVID. So why don't we do something where we can talk to these people and we enjoy talking to them, and we can share these conversations that we have with them, and hopefully more people will get interested in their brand and hopefully want to purchase their products and so on. And it's become this I guess this really nice journey, and we've both learned a lot. We also have Nicola's friend, who's also now my friend, Lucy Roth, who's from Australia. She lives in the same area as Nicola. She's a part of it as well, and she just couldn't join us today, I think because she's working at the moment, unfortunately. But she's been really great. She hopped on to the Greenstyle podcast like maybe August last year, maybe a little bit later than August. So she's been with us for a while now as well. And we have interviewed some really, really awesome people, which has been so incredible. You might know these brands, especially if you're into surfing, like if you know Salt Gypsy, they're an Australian surfing brand that we've interviewed. We've interviewed Claire Press, who is this really major, I think, like sustainable fashion journalist, or maybe influencer, you could call her as well at this point. We've interviewed her and what she knows about the fashion industry. We've interviewed a lot of smaller businesses. We have like Nisa Women, which is an underwear brand based in Wellington. And I feel like there's so many more, but there's a lot.
There's so many. And just to give a little context, the first episode, you could say, that we put out was with Claire Press, and it was also only showed like live, well, sort of live. We had to pre-record it, but we showed the first episode on World Oceans Day last year. So this is kind of a big day for us. It's which is really exciting, and we're really happy to have continued this journey, because we've learned so much. So I guess for you personally, Maha, what have you learned about creating a podcast of this nature? Because it's a sort of a specific or niche sort of thing, if you could say that. What have you learned about creating that sort of thing?
Well, I guess it's kind of like, talking to so many people about ethical fashion and fashion business and so forth. We've learned a lot about the fashion industry in itself. We've learned that there is no such thing at the moment as a perfect fabric. There's definitely fabrics that are better than others, but for the most part, people are still trying to find a better fabric out there for businesses to start using, which has actually been something that I didn't even consider. I always thought to myself, like, there has to be, the best fabric out there, the perfect fabric out there that people can use. But that isn't the case at the moment. So technology is working hard at the moment. I think also podcasting in this nature as well. I guess recently, we've kind of seen like the dangers and also the risks of hosting a podcast and the platform that we have as well. Because we also talk about, the fast fashion industry and so forth. And there's some people who are part of the fast fashion industry who get very, very, I guess, either offended or maybe even angry at us for talking about it as well, which has happened in the past. And in some ways, we've had some extreme cases, which I'm unsure whether I should talk about or not, just in case.
Maybe not.
Yeah. We've had some extreme cases. So I think something that I've also really learned is that people who don't really have that empathy for, trying to like pay your workers a living wage or have that empathy towards the environment, they can be kind of dangerous when you're speaking about this kind of stuff. And I think this is something that you have to accept as well, is that in the fashion industry, some people create fashion brands not because they have a love of fashion or because they genuinely care about textiles. It's usually sometimes just for profit, is something that I've also come to realize recently as well. So there's a lot of like bigger picture things that I think for me personally, I really learnt through the Greenstyle, which has really impacted the way that I've thought about the industry a lot. Like I always knew that the industry was a bit shady, and I always thought like, well, we have these really awesome brands doing work. So I think there's definitely like two sides to it. You have the people really who care about textiles, who care about the people that they're working with. And then you have this other side of, I guess, people just really giving into capitalist mindsets, really. So I think those are the main key takeaways. What about you? I mean, you host it, like, what have you learned really from it?
Well, I guess I was just about to say, that's sort of one of the reasons that we interview brands who are doing good. I think focusing mostly on the negative sides, or those fast fashion brands that aren't doing so well, not only can like take a toll on yourself copping backlash, but also just you're focused in this sort of negative mindset of, oh, like, here we go again, like, these brands are doing awful things for our people and they're not paying their workers, and you see toxic dyes leaking out, and it's horrible. But I think, personally, I think focusing the way that we've done it, focusing on small brands, well, mostly small brands, and the good things that they're doing really uplifts myself personally, and just shares the good light around, because I think they really need it, and now more than ever. So I would say the way that we've done it has really been awesome for me personally.
Yeah, and I think I've met so many like really great people now, and actually I've become like friends with people personally now because of interviewing them, which has been really great. There was this person, we actually didn't interview her, we just made a post about her, and she was a crochet designer, and I just found her on Instagram, and I was like, oh, she's doing really cool stuff. I'll send her a message and maybe we can post about it. And then she just happens to live like 10-minute walk away from me, which is so funny. So we've ended up becoming quite good mates now, which is really cool. And even I talked to Nicola and Lucy about this, how we interviewed this person, this woman from Billy Bags, which is this surfboard brand based in Mount Maunganui, which is in New Zealand, and they make surfboard bags out of old duvets. And I was saying how cool it was I was able to go to the Mount for the first time, and I was able to stay with her because I really want to go to the surf festival. And I think the greatest thing is that people who are usually, you know, running like ethical businesses and stuff usually have the same mindset as you almost in a way when you also care. So you get along with them really well and you become really good mates with them. So I think that's like a very upside to the whole podcasting thing and having a podcast of this nature. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the exact same thing, as well as in a recent sort of setting, one of the interviews that I did with James Martel, who's the founder of Outlander, who is an amazing person as well as just an incredible company and business, has just collaborated with another brand. And I think that's a really great indication of where the industry is heading, sort of collaborating and not, you know, fighting with each other, not I'm better than you and you're doing this and I'm doing this better, but really understanding that we're all part of this equation and working together is really important.
Yes. And on that as well, like I think it's been really great seeing how like our podcast, because it's not a massive podcast, it's quite small, like we only, you know, we don't have a massive following or anything like that, but it's been great seeing how it's impacted other people. So I actually talked to this woman the other day. Her name's Renee Williams. She does repair and mending workshops in Auckland, where I'm from. And she was telling me, she's like, yeah, actually, I got in touch with one of the brands that you interviewed. I hadn't heard of them before, but they said in your podcast episode that they were actually wanting to do more repairing for their clothes so that they could have like some type of program where people can bring back their clothes to their workshops and then in New Zealand and they can repair them for them. And she's like, yeah, I was able to reach out to them and let them know how they can do this. And we had a Zoom call and I was able to show them, and I was able to do that for them because I heard of your podcast. And if I hadn't heard of your podcast, then I wouldn't have been able to reach out and know that they wanted somebody who could teach them how to repair some clothes. So I thought that was really cool. And I don't think I've even told you that, Nicola. I thought it was very cool.
That's so awesome. I was just about to ask you, like, did you have any favorite moments in interviews or anything? But I think you've kind of covered that, right?
Yeah, like kind of. I'm trying to think if there's a very specific moment. I think I'm currently editing that episode right now, but there's one that hasn't been released yet with Karishma from Karishma Design. And I think that's probably one of my most favorite episodes I've actually edited at the moment. It's about to be released, but she's very, very passionate. She also lives in Auckland, where I'm from, and she's very passionate about young people, and she's a teacher herself, and she has this whole business, or I guess it's kind of not really a business, it's more like a research kind of thing that she has going on. And she's very passionate about her research and teaching her students in their high schools about the research that she's doing. And next week, actually, I'm going to be going with her to her school and actually talk about Greenstyle. And we're going to be listening to their different pitches about their different sustainable businesses that they want to create in their schools. So we'll be able to hear those pitches and then choose which pitch or which group can get the money to create that sustainable business, which is really awesome. So yeah, I think listening to Karishma talk about how passionate she is about young people and how she really wants to use this funding program that she's just created from her research brand to start uplifting more young people has been really exciting. And that's such like a localized impact as well, which is why I'm really excited. Because when I think the reason why we enjoy Greenstyle so much and why we enjoy talking to brands is because they're brands and people that are like localized, like they're people that we kind of almost know personally because we're from the same area. I feel like if I was talking to somebody, you know, all the way from Europe somewhere, and they're telling me that they're going to do this awesome program with their young people in Europe, it'd seem really cool, but it just wouldn't be as exciting because it's, you know, it's all happening all the way in Europe. But it's really exciting when you see stuff happening like in your own community, and you're like, the kids in my community are now able to start their own sustainable business because we have funding programs that people like Karishma are now going to be implementing in New Zealand, which is really cool. So I think, yeah, that's definitely one of my more favorite parts at the moment has been seeing just what people are doing and just seeing how can I help them? How can, you know, we at Greenstyle be able to support the programs that they have going on? And I think next week, and being able to go to a school with her next week is like a really good show of that, is how we can help them out. Yeah,
absolutely. And like you were saying, it's more localized, and you're almost in the exact community that this is sort of going on. And I guess lockdown and this whole past year as well has really highlighted how important local businesses are and supporting local businesses. And for us, well, for me at least, and I'm sure you feel the same, uplifting these businesses' voices in such a hard time feels really reinvigorating, because you're supporting them through the hardest times whilst also they're supporting such a massive and important cause.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And it's definitely like, it's a very, I guess, rewarding, as you said, like reinvigorating. It's a very like rewarding experience, I think. And it's cool that, you know, these people are taking their time to be able to speak to us, because we're literally just, you know, 3 teenagers just wanting to speak to them and share it with other people, and hopefully other people will have a listen. So that's right. I think that there's a lot of people out there doing some really amazing things, and hopefully we'll be able to release some more episodes, even though editing can take so long sometimes, especially when we're students and we've got studying and we're like, we got to edit another episode. But it's still exciting being able to edit those episodes and re-listening everything that we were able to talk to a person about. So yeah,
that's what we love to do. What would you say some of the key things that you've learned about the fashion industry and those who are particularly wanting to do good? Are there like key themes or values that you've seen in a successful business, or like companies that are doing good in this industry? Like, what are the sort of key things going on?
Yeah, I think when looking at businesses, and I guess specifically fashion businesses, but I guess this could probably go overall as well. When you're trying to decide whether you think a fashion business or sustainable business is actually sustainable, it's definitely just looking into what they actually offer. So for example, if they're having things like take back programs, for example, or they're working on a take back program, and in the fashion industry, a take back program is pretty much when you give the clothes that you don't want anymore from that you got from that brand, and then give it back to the brand, then they're able to reuse it and recycle it into some new products. So I think that's a really good initiative that brands should be using, and that's actually becoming more of a theme within ethical fashion brands. And there's also the stuff, as I said before, about the whole repairing thing as well. And because I think when we think about fashion brands, we're always kind of looking at the very, very beginning starting point, like what fabrics are they using, what dyes are they using, and so forth, which you do need to look into, and hopefully they'll have information on that. But I think it's always very important when it comes to a brand claiming that they're sustainable, that they actually have like an end goal when it comes to the textile waste, because it's really great to have like the very, very beginning part. But if you're not thinking about where your clothing is actually going to end up at the end of the day, then I don't know if you could truly call yourself completely sustainable or whatnot, just because the textile waste is, you know, textile waste is massive. And I always forget how many tons. It's like so many tons that goes into our landfills every year, but textile waste is definitely an issue, and it emits a lot of really, really bad chemicals into our atmosphere when it comes to it trying to like decompose in the landfill. So yeah, I think that's something to definitely look out for. Another thing to look out for as well is that a lot more brands are starting to showcase a lot more certifications from, I guess, qualified corporations. We recently made a post on our Instagram as well, which you can follow. It's called Greenstyle with 2 L's. And it basically just showed how can you actually check the authenticity of a brand certification, because there has been issues in the past where a brand who may be greenwashing or whatnot is being like, I have all these certifications, and then their whole, I guess, like business model just doesn't seem like they're actually an ethical brand, or you're kind of confused how they obtain those certifications. So it's always good to double check and talk to those certifications and email them and be like, hey, does this brand actually have the certification? And it's happened before where these brands are showcasing their certifications, but they don't actually have the certification. They're just showcasing these random certifications to make it seem like they're ethical when they're actually not. So that's also a good thing to look out for. So certifications is good, but also double checking to make sure that the certifications, such as like, there's a bunch of different ones. There's like BCI Caution Initiative is quite a big one. That's something that like Kathmandu uses, for example. There's also like Global Organic Textile Standards is like this organization, and they give out certifications. So it's kind of like those ones are the ones to look out for, but there's a lot more that you could really look out for, but definitely double check is what I can say about that.
Absolutely. And that sort of ties into one of the big issues that we've kind of had a chat about at a few of our meetings, I guess, about greenwashing and about businesses that are actually going out of their way to, I guess you could say, fib or make up certain things about what they're doing when they're not. So being aware about that and doing your research into what's actually going on is something I've learned and it's really important. So yeah,
because you think that, like, you know, when brands are putting on their website that they have these certifications, that they would be telling the truth, but there's cases where they don't, and it's just very awkward, and you're like, wow, is this even legal for you to like put this on your website if you don't actually have it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I didn't even think that was a thing. I didn't think that brands could actually lie and be like, we have the certification, when they don't. But that's just something that like I've recently learned through Greenstyle, is that brands can do that and they can get away with it unless you actually look into it. So yeah, it's quite a shame, but that's just kind of how it goes, I guess, in the world of business and greenwashing and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, just a little, I guess, little summary. How would you say fashion in particular links in with the ocean? Because for me and for a lot of people, the ocean and, you know, the fashion industry doesn't really seem to have correlation. So what is the gap? Like, what are we missing, and what can be done about this gap?
Yeah, like what's the connection between the fashion industry and the ocean? So
yeah,
I think the link is quite massive. I think any polluting industry has an impact on the ocean somehow, and that goes the same with the fashion industry. You have your more direct links, like very, very direct links, such as we could go into microplastics. I feel like more people are becoming a lot more aware about microplastics and polyester and acrylic and so forth. And when you wear these products, put them in the washing machine, your microplastics, microfibers from these t-shirts and jeans and so on are going to leak into the drains and then therefore leak into the oceans. And it's something like trillions of microfibers. These small little fiber plastics are currently in the oceans just from textiles. So like that's a very direct link on how the fashion industry, through their use of man-made plastic materials in their clothing, is impacting the ocean. You also have your more direct links, such as, you know, you have dyes as well. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen some images. I didn't, unfortunately, set up a PowerPoint. I just decided I'd talk. But if you look into some images and just look at like leakage of dyes, fast fashion industry or something, you'll probably end up seeing a lot of different colors just washing away into this river, and the river's leading out to the ocean, and that, you know, pollutes the environment so bad it impacts people's drinking water. It impacts the ecology within that environment as well. So those are kind of the more direct linkages, but there's also, you know, I guess the non-direct linkages, and how even when we're putting these textile waste, for example, if we put textile waste in landfills and it's emitting all these emissions into our atmosphere, that's therefore warming up our environment. impacting our oceans. Coral reefs are dying. More fish are coming extinct because of the difference in temperature in the water. So there's a lot that the fashion industry does towards the ocean, and there's the direct linkages, and then you have your non-direct linkages. But yeah, they're definitely linked when it comes to environmental impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to comprehend almost just how detrimental one particular industry can be, and to think that we are so unaware of what's going on and what's actually being done and how our clothes are made and who's making our clothes, and the effects that's going on is really confronting. But there is a revolution going on in this space, and it's really awesome to see that. But I just wanted to add to that, between the ocean and the fashion industry, being aware of what's going into your clothing, particularly what sort of materials going on. Having a look at the labels on your t-shirts is really important, whether you're buying or choosing to buy from, wherever it may be. Having a look at whether it's, acrylic or nylon or polyester or all those sorts of things is really important to just have in the back of your mind, because there's not really a lot of access to preventing microfibers from leaking. There's a few things going on in sort of like the washing machines. So I think they're making filters where you can add to your washing machine, and it's supposed to prevent microfibers from leaking into the rest of it. But it's a really confronting space, and just being aware of what's going on is really important, I think.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a huge issue to tackle. And I remember us even talking to Claire Press about this like a year ago. And even she was saying that microfibers and preventing them from getting into our oceans is just such a massive challenge that needs to be tackled really straight on. So hopefully, with new technology, as you were saying, Nicola, before, hopefully we'll start seeing a decrease of microfibers actually leaking into our oceans. But at the same time, we don't even know how many microfibers per year are actually leaking into our oceans, because there's almost, I think, like no way to actually really calculate how many microfibers are actually leaking into our oceans per year. So we can only really hope for the best, that technology will come out, as you said, and it'll stop. But it's very like sad thinking about it. But yeah, sorry to put it down a bit on a sad note on that one when it comes to microfibers. But yeah, definitely look at the fabric that you're wearing, and if you can go for more natural fibers, that's always secondhand natural fibers, I like to say, then that's always a go-to, always Absolutely. A plus one. Yeah.
Now that was a little bit doom and gloom, but how can people fight this good fight? What are some of the things people who are listening can actually do right now to help with this massive issue? Help us, Maha.
I think definitely it comes to, like, when it comes to tackling the fashion industry, it's a lot. It's a very massive issue. It's, similar to I guess you can really compare it to the fossil fuel industry and how much of a massive thing it is to tackle that. And again, it's almost trickier, I think, than the fossil fuel industry, because fashion is something that, and fossil fuels are as well, but fashion is something that, every person, we all wear clothes. All of us wears clothes. Maybe, in other places, maybe not in smaller areas, maybe people don't feel the need to wear clothes somewhere, but holistically, everyone wears clothes. So it's you can kind of have two different ways of looking at it. You have like your ethical consumerism and you have your consumer activism, and you kind of just have to use these two concepts to help tackle the fashion industry, more or less. So when it comes to ethical consumerism, I guess that kind of comes to the more individualistic choices. And I know that some people, I guess, are a bit anti trying to do individualistic choices, because it becomes the whole like, well, it's not me, it's like these corporations. And at that point, I agree, like, we shouldn't put the blame on ourselves. We should be putting the blame on the industry in itself. But I guess ethical consumerism isn't really putting the blame on yourself. It's just you taking a step back and being like, I don't really want to be involved with this industry. And a way to not really be involved with the fast fashion industry is you kind of have two different things that you can really do. You can buy secondhand. I feel like that's becoming a lot more niche. I feel like so many people now these days are thrifting, and it's the norm now. And I feel like it's becoming a lot more accessible as well to thrift. There's certain areas that are a bit more expensive than others, but you just kind of have to find the go-to places. And I'm sure if you have a friend who thrifts, they can tell you all the spots. So you have the part where you can thrift, and then you have the part where you can buy from businesses who are actually making some really good human rights and really good environmental rights change. So if you even looked up, local ethical fashion businesses in your area, you should be able to find them. The only downside to ethical fashion businesses, and in their own right, they're usually a bit more expensive than your fast fashion or secondhand, because they'll usually be paying their workers a living wage and so forth that's actually needed for those workers. And I remember watching a really interesting TikTok last week, and this guy was saying, he's like, we've become so used to clothing being so cheap because of the fast fashion industry that when we see a price that's maybe like $80 for a t-shirt or something, we see that as so expensive because we're so used to these underpriced garments in the fast fashion industry. So $80 for us for a t-shirt seems like a lot, when really that should be the standing price, because when you think about the amount of materials and you think about all the workers behind it and so forth, you think about packaging, and you want to use these sustainable materials, it should be $80 a t-shirt. But also on the same side, when we think about that, you also have to think about, your own situation. And usually I don't try and urge people to go for ethical fashion businesses unless they're actually financially stable. But if you can't, for some reason, buy from an ethical fashion business because you're a student like I am, so I hardly ever buy from ethical fashion businesses unless I've like saved up for it or something from work. Just go for the secondhand thrifting sites. You actually can, you have your sites like Depop that's becoming a lot more popular. I actually got banned from Depop the other day because I know, so sad. So I'm using another site instead. I use Designer Wardrobe, which is an Auckland one, and there's also some Facebook and Instagram pages in New Zealand I like using. I just got banned from it because I don't have PayPal, and I've always been kind of sketchy about PayPal personally. If you have a PayPal, that's fine, but I'm just very like skeptical about stuff. And because I didn't have PayPal, they ended up banning me from it because I was trying to pay in a different method. Anyway, just a heads up, use PayPal for Depop so you don't get banned. So I think that's kind of the ethical consumerism side, is like making those individual choices and not really giving into the fast fashion industry. And then you have your consumer activism side. And consumer activism is pretty much, I like to think that like we at Greenstyle are consumer activists. That's when you start questioning. And that's when you start questioning fast fashion brands. And that's when you almost, I guess, demand change in a way. So I guess, like, for example, if you're seeing brands like H&M is like a massive fashion brand to tackle, but there's a lot more people who are getting a lot more momentum and almost, I guess, anger against, I guess, at H&M, because they're trying to make some change, but like at the same time they're like, we have this loop program now and blah, blah, blah. There's that whole thing with Macy Williams that they're currently doing, but they're still paying their workers like fuck all. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this, but they're paying their workers nothing still. And so it's like, how can you call yourself sustainable if you're actually not even paying your workers what they need to be paid? You're still paying them nothing, more or less. So it's asking those questions. It's, maybe getting your friends together. It's maybe getting, a group who are an environmental group together to like send out some emails to even, I'm also an activist in a lot of different environmental spheres, like, School Strike for Climate, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff. So for me, like, it's more or less just like standing outside of H&M with a sign and almost forcing managers to look at it and be like, why aren't you paying your workers a living wage yet? Like, you're making so much money, why are you not paying them a living wage? So that's kind of a different angle that you can do.
Yeah, Maha, just quickly, could we just highlight the difference between a living and a minimum wage for our listeners? Just because there's, maybe not everyone understands that.
Yeah. So minimum wage is I guess the best way to describe minimum wage is just the minimum wage that you get when you're working. So for us in New Zealand, it's actually gone up heaps in the last 3 years. It used to be $16 and now it's at $20. And that's just kind of the standard wage that the government gives you. But it's not usually enough for you to actually live by. So, you're getting paid $16 an hour for however many hours that you're working that week, but you're still struggling to pay rent. You're still struggling to get yourself food, water, pay off your electricity bills, blah, blah, blah. And that's in New Zealand, it's becoming a lot more of an issue because our living prices and our housing prices, rental crisis is insane at the moment here. So for us, it's becoming so difficult to afford rent and so on because we aren't really earning a living wage. So living wage in New Zealand, I'm unsure about other places in the world. You'd have to look into your own places. Living wage is just where you can afford the basic needs that you need. So usually like rent, as I said, rent, food, it's kind of water, electricity, all that kind of stuff, transport. So that's what a living wage is. So living wage here is $22.10. And I'm really lucky. I currently work at a place that gives me living wage, but not all places do that. Though we're getting closer in New Zealand to giving a living wage, because our minimum wage has increased to $20. So it's gone from $16 to $20 in the last few years. So that's the difference. If anybody needs any more clarity.
And living wage also sort of, I remember in an interview with James Martel, Outlander, and I keep coming back to this interview because it was just so incredible to speak to him, and you should definitely check out that episode if you can. But he was talking how living wage also means having the ability to put in some savings, to take your family out every once in a while, to have that emergency money to, whether that be in a medical emergency or whatever it may be, having the ability to financially support yourself like every normal human being goes through. Every human being goes through some sorts of, ups and downs, and having the ability to financially support yourself through that is a living wage, not a minimum wage where you are just not even scraping through. And living wage also means supporting your workers in environments that are safe. So having a fire exit is, is important in those ethical conditions. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about this. We're not just talking about, okay, they get paid enough. No, it's important to ensure safety of every single person. So
definitely. And just Jacqueline Norris just said to our chat, parts of the US have minimum wage less than $8. Like, to me, that's so insane that I'm not too knowledgeable about American culture. I know a little bit about American culture. I have a dad who's American, and I was born there and lived there for about 6 years until I moved to New Zealand. But I think the culture that they have, I think it's around like you make your money off of tips, for example, like especially in hospitality. It's like that's how you make your money, and that's such a chance thing. It's like you're just relying on this customer to hopefully give you enough money for that night so that you can actually go home, eat some food, pay off your rent, and hopefully have some money on the side to like watch a movie or something. For me, that's so insane. I don't know how it really works there. Someone can give us some clarity at some other point, I'm sure, but very interesting to me that that's a system that happens. And
I wanted to add to what you were saying before about your personal consumerism. Even shopping your own wardrobe is a thing that you can do, realizing you've got whatever you have in your wardrobe and seeing how you can work out with your outfits and all that. But being sustainable and being ethical doesn't mean going out and spending all your money into one brand because they're doing great things. That's awesome, but let's be realistic, that's not accessible to every person, and certainly not me. So shopping your own wardrobe is a absolute tool to use.
Yeah, I definitely have that teenage mindset. It's actually really bad, and I'm trying to get out of it, especially now that we started Greenstyle and stuff. It's definitely that mindset, like you wear like this really amazing outfit once and you post about it, and then it's like you can never wear or post about it again because everyone knows that you've already worn it. And I think it's definitely a very common mindset. It's a common mindset that I have. It's a mindset that a lot of my friends have. So it's definitely growing out of that. And also, another thing that I do as well is I always borrow clothes from my friends. Like, I have really amazing friends, and you definitely have to ensure that you take good care of them. But that's also a thing that I do to like spice up my wardrobe as well, because I can get so bored of my wardrobe pretty easily. So yeah, borrowing friends' clothes is always a good shout whenever you want to go out and you're like, she has a really cute dress, she might let me borrow it, and you just have to take good care of it. So that's another thing you can do. Also, like, even something that really interests me, and I'm actually unsure of the sustainability around it, but this is something I do a lot, but it's around like renting clothes. And I think that's definitely something that's become a lot more popular in New Zealand. It's like you have an event and you end up renting out a dress or renting out a really cute outfit to go out for a dinner or something like that. And I think maybe that when I think about the sustainability issues around it, it's definitely better than, you know, you going out trying to buy something for this event and you're only going to ever wear it once, probably for like some massive event. And then if it's like a ball gown or something, you'll probably only ever wear it once. So I like the idea of renting because you can wear it once and then give it back. And then you know that it's going to have another life and somebody else is going to rent it out and wear it. So I like those aspects to it. I guess there's also the stuff like shipping costs, packaging as well. Not every rental place does good packaging. There's like those commercially compostable packaging that I think some rental places use. But I don't know, do you rent at all? Like, what are your thoughts on renting clothes?
I like, personally, I've rented one sort of for a formal occasion. Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. But yeah, being aware of the plastic that goes into shipping and all that is, you know, important. But yeah, I mean, if that's the way that you want to do things, absolutely. It's all about, I guess, taking a step back in this whole conversation. It's about finding the ways that you can do things with whatever you have, and being aware of what you're wearing and how that's, you know, coming about, and where that's going to end up. So whether that be renting is absolutely up to you. But yeah,
I think it's always, because obviously sometimes the rental and the clothing brand in itself that you're renting from like isn't from a sustainable brand at points. So it's kind of, it depends like on your pros and cons for renting. Like, I rent, but you know, you definitely have to look at the pros and cons and see if it works for you as well, ethically or morally. Something as well that I want to talk about is actually drop shipping. I thought we could have like a little conversation about it.
Sure.
Do you know what drop shipping is, Nicola?
I have no idea.
So
actually don't.
So this is actually something that I think I've only really recently become like, I guess, annoyed with. So for me, like, I don't know if you guys have friends, but well, probably you have friends, but I don't know if you have friends that just randomly in high school or stuff would just randomly create their own like clothing brand. And this happened a few times in high school where I don't know, I think they maybe thought it was a good idea to try and make some profit, and they're like, okay, we'll just, you know, create our own clothing brand or something. And what happens is that, you know, these people create these clothing brands not because they have, like, we talked a little bit about this before, not because they have like a love for textiles. It's kind of just like a way for them to make money, maybe get some clout for saying that they own a clothing brand or something. And then they'll go to some supplier. It's usually, you know, there's suppliers like Alibaba or AliExpress, and there's other suppliers as well. And they'll order it from there, and then they'll make like, I don't know, maybe 50 t-shirts or whatever, and then they'll sell it in like at school in New Zealand. And I used to always think that was a bit interesting, but I never really thought much of it until recently, because now I think a lot more when I see these Instagram pages popping up being like, I just started a clothing brand. It's like these random hoodies or something. And I think to myself, like, and you know, they're selling the hoodies for like $20, so pretty cheap. And I think to myself, like, what's the, like, where are they actually getting the clothing from? Like, you have no idea. It's just this random supplier and they have them drop shipping. So drop shipping is essentially a term where you get this random supplier from somewhere around the world, and then they'll just make all these clothings for you in their workshop, and they'll do it for a lot of other different brands, and then they'll drop ship it and give it to you. So I used to think about it like, well, I've currently been thinking about it in a more smaller community context, like a group of friends. But, you know, brands like big clothing brands, and it's not illegal to drop ship, but like big clothing brands use drop shipping as like their main system of creating clothes. And I think that's always another sign that if you think a brand is drop shipping and using like a supplier from Alibaba, for example, to create their clothing, that's usually a sign that they're not sustainable either. And yeah, more or less, it's not really an ethical way to actually create clothes. And I think if anybody out there is thinking of creating their own clothing brand, for example, I definitely think that you should hopefully have a passion for textiles and not just going to this random supplier from Alibaba and then drop shipping it and selling it, being like, look at this, I'm making all these cool clothes and I'm creating a clothing brand. But I don't know, what are your thoughts about it? Because it's just something recently I've kind of become more annoyed about as I see more Instagram pages popping up with it, and I'm like, okay.
Again, I honestly just think being aware if you are going to create a brand like that, being aware of just what's going on behind the scenes, because like we were talking before, there's a lot of industries and a lot of factories and who aren't treating their workers in ways that are humane, basically. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much more I can say on it other than just being aware of what's going on behind closed doors, because there's so much going on.
And I wonder, when it comes to you know, these people making these random clothing brands, I wonder if they actually think about those impacts as well. Because you know, I have, as I said, these Instagram pages are popping up from like girls who I've gone to school with in the past, and I think to myself, do they actually know like what's happening behind the scenes when they create these brands? So I think, you know, it's always good when a person's creating a clothing brand that they think about these things through before just randomly trying to make some clothing brand. Yeah.
That's sort of brings me on to my next couple of questions. Well, advocacy, understanding, you know, what's going on, and using your voice and any means that you can to advocate for change, and education is what we're all about at Greenstyle. So what sort of advice would you personally give to youth about advocating, whether that be for the ocean or... Yeah, I can hear you.
Completely like stop.
I can still hear you.
I can't hear anything.
Maybe take the headphones off.
Oh wait, hold up. Okay, repeat your question. Hello.
Sorry guys.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Maha?
Wait. Talk again.
Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm gonna go back to this. Okay, sorry, my headphones just completely like switched systems and now I'm like, what's going on? Okay, if you just repeat the question again, that would be lovely.
Sure thing, all good. I was just wondering what sort of advice you would give to youth about ocean advocacy or environmental advocacy or fashion advocacy, as that's what we're all about.
Yeah, I guess it's a broad question. I guess it really depends what your aim is and what you want to do. When I think about advocacy, like my thing in my mind is like a group of people with a message, trying to get out that message is something that I see personally in my mind. Maybe it's different for other people. I think when it comes to advocacy, it's always very difficult when you're doing it on your own. And I think it's always good to try and find like-minded people to help push the same message as you, and you guys have the same values of beliefs. And it's kind of what we've done at Greenstyle, that we found each other. We have this message that we want to give out, and that's currently what we're doing. I think it's always very powerful when you can gather physically in groups and do something amazing. So even when it comes to things like School Strike for Climate, you know, that more or less, I don't really know about it from a world setting, but like from a New Zealand setting, that was just, you know, friends who were like, we need a School Strike for Climate in New Zealand, and then just putting it up on some sort of random environmental national group and being like, hey, we want to do a School Strike for Climate here. We don't believe there's actually enough happening.
And because they put it in that one singular environmental group, word of mouth just got all around. And that's what ended up creating this massive movement in New Zealand for School Strike for Climate. So that's it's definitely finding the like-minded people, and it's definitely putting the message in the right place for it to hopefully spread to get more supporters so that you can actively push that message. Because as I said, it's always very difficult if you're that one person just trying to push one message. It's really tricky doing it on your own, and also very exhausting as well. I think something that's very common and something that I've experienced as well is like burnout from activism, just because you're taking on so much stuff and you're trying to do all this work. And if you're not spreading that load and giving it to other people, then you're not going to be able to advocate as much as you'd like to, or as what's the word, as good as you can, I guess, is probably the best way to put it. So that's what I think when it comes to advocacy. And it's the same when it comes to fashion or when it comes to ocean. It's just find your people, push your message, and maybe a good way to try and push your message is you have your social media side, but it's also like hosting things like workshops and stuff like that, and is a good way to try and like talk to people, to meet more people. I think about for me, I think about my university, and I think about I run the fashion club at university, and for us it hasn't always been very directed on sustainability. It's kind of directed on fashion as a whole. But for me, it's been really great being able to run different sustainable events. Like recently we had a repair workshop with Renee Williams, as I talked about her before. And that was just a great way of it wasn't even trying to like shove down the sustainability message down people's throat to like fashion. It was just like, how can you repair your clothes so that you don't have to throw it away in the end? So it's stuff like that as well, which I think will really help push your message too. Yeah. What do you think, Nicola, when it comes to advocacy?
I would think the exact same thing. I would also say that you don't need, a degree in, whatever it is, environmental sustainability, or you don't need a degree in fashion or marine science or whatever it is. I would say it's just about following your passion and what your calling is, and finding your way of communicating with people. And it's all about looking for opportunities and going and finding those opportunities where you can put yourself out there, because you do end up learning so much about yourself and just the way that you communicate with people, and just pursuing your own passion, which is really important, because it does get really hard. It does get really hard in confronting, learning, and just being conscious of all these new things that you've learned. But it can be really confronting. So having a passion about something is important in more than one way. Yeah,
definitely. And as you said, I really liked how you said, like, you don't need a degree to advocate for something. You don't need a degree in marine biology to advocate for ocean. You don't need a degree in fashion to advocate about sustainable fashion. Just if you want to know the knowledge, there's so many resources out there for you to learn. You don't need a degree in it. Yeah, I like how you said
absolutely. That. Yeah. So my last couple of questions is, where is the Greenstyle headed? What's on the agenda for us, Maha? I better write this down.
Yes, what is on the agenda for us? You tell me. I think where we're currently headed is we do have a website that actually has been created. We haven't launched it yet, but the website has a list of different Australian and New Zealand businesses, ethical fashion businesses, and you can go into the Australian tab or the New Zealand tab, and you can click into the business, and then you'll see a blurb about them, and then you'll see our top picks from that season that they've put up. Like, I don't know, for example, we have a swimwear brand, and we'll show off like our favorite swimwear stuff from that. And we're like, if you like them, then, here's a look at their stuff, maybe buy from them if you want. So we have that side to it, which is kind of, I guess, a tool as a way for you to find which ethical fashion businesses are near you in your area. And then we also really want to start using it as more of like a educational tool as well, in terms of like the fashion industry. And we have, for those of you who may follow us on Greenstyle, we are looking for people to write for our website as well. It could just be one-off, or it could be, if you want to be a regular writer, then you can be that as well. But we really want to start showcasing people who follow us and what their thoughts are. So that's very exciting. We've had a couple really good pitches, and we're really hoping that once we get those opinion pieces in, we'll launch our website and people can start having a read of those. yeah, so that's kind of the main thing that we see ourselves doing in the near future. I guess long term, I'd really like to start doing more, I guess, like workshop type stuff around Greenstyle, like in our respective areas. It wouldn't be something that I guess would be very accessible for like our world, unless we did like a Zoom type thing, but for our listeners around the world. But for me, I'd really like to start doing more workshops and stuff as Greenstyle, like in my respective area. Personally, Nicola, just so you know.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yep. I'll be doing that too. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah.
So I guess my last sort of question is, because we do only have a few more minutes, for you, is there anyone that you look up to or admire in this space, or is there anyone that's influenced your life in the fashion movement?
Yeah, I feel like I've met so many people now. I feel like there's so many people that really inspire me. I always say that like the beginning person who made me care about fashion and sustainability was going to be my high school textile teacher, because she was the one who introduced me to it. And yeah, I think because of her, yeah, it's the reason why I'm doing Greenstyle now, and why I've met Nicola through World Oceans Day and so forth, is because she kind of pushed me to think about sustainable fashion. And she knew that I was an environmentalist at the time as well in high school, and she just thought, get on this, like, did you know blah blah blah? And I was like, I did not know that. So for me, she's very inspiring in a way, because she was the one to tell me the message around the fashion industry and why it should be more sustainable, and how the fast fashion industry is a very, very, very polluting industry. And I think when it comes to people who inspire me, definitely Nicola and Lucy. Nicola and Lucy inspire me a lot as well. They're both very, very passionate young women, and they do such amazing stuff in Greenstyle and also outside of Greenstyle as well. And they care a lot about sustainability. They care a lot about the environment, and just ensuring that young people are being heard. That's another thing at Greenstyle that we really try and push for, as young people, is that we want to ensure that young people are being heard as well, which is why we want to do our opinion pieces more. So yeah, I think Nicola and Lucy are the main reason why I've kept at Greenstyle, just because they've been so supportive and always have such amazing ideas. So yes, those are the people that inspire me.
Likewise, Maha. It's been amazing to be on this journey at the Greenstyle, and I'm looking forward to all that's to come with it. Where can everybody find our podcast?
You can find our podcast. I do not have a link on me, but you wrote it down.
All good. We'll post the link up.
We can post the link, but I can put it in the chat. If you just look up the Greenstyle Podcast on Spotify, it'll come up.
Or Apple, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, more or less. Oh, no, I spelled that wrong. Well, I forgot the Greenstyle Podcast. Yeah, so if you just look up the Greenstyle Podcast, it should come up. And our Instagram is at Greenstyle, and that's where we do a lot of our posting. We don't have a Facebook page, just because, I don't know, I find Facebook kind of weird nowadays. Maybe it's becoming more of like an older person thing than like a younger person thing. So
I still use Facebook.
Yeah, do you? I hardly use Facebook these days. Yeah, so that's kind of where you can find us, and where you can listen to some of our interviews in the last year. We try and post an interview probably like once a month. We'll try and put a podcast episode up, just because it does take time for us to get an interview sorted and then edit it ourselves and so on. But yeah, hopefully there'll be a lot more interesting people that we'll be interviewing that you can have a listen to and learn more about. And we're going to start getting more like general at some point as well, like just talk about sustainable business in general. I think what Nicola was really keen on doing. So if you're not interested in fashion, but you're interested in sustainable business in general, then definitely hit us up anyway, and we'll be talking to more generalized sustainable businesses soon. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Maha. We so excited and appreciate you coming to chat. And yeah, if anyone has any questions around anything, we'd be happy to answer them for the next couple of minutes. But yeah, thank you, Maha. It's been really awesome.
Thanks for having me. It's been a fun time. I knew that was just gonna be like pretty chill, because it's just like you and me chatting like usual when we have a call.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's been pretty chill. Yeah. Too cool. Is this going on for 24 hours?
Yes, 24 hours. Isn't that incredible?
That's insane. Wow. Such time.
Thank you,
to organize.
guys. Thank you, Laura.
What's your plans after this?
Study.
Lovely.
Okay, if there are no questions from the audience, okay, I don't think there are any questions. So thank you so much, Nicola and Maha, for those amazing discussions. I really enjoyed it, and I think I'll give your podcast a listen as well. Great stuff, guys.